Hi everyone. Hope you're doing well. I know I had said last video that I was gonna that was the last one, but I realized that I had forgotten something. So I've got one more video I'm going to show you, and that is on our um, debug anyway. Okay, so we'll just do this and refresh. So um, we are going to make it so that when we click this a second time, it shows the next set of Pokemon. We are right now showing all the Pokemon pictures, and like I said before, you can style these in any different way that you want, and you can even make it so that you could potentially, when you click this button, you do something. So right now, we are looking at wanting to go to show the next set. So if I go to if I go to this guy, and we go look at the Pokemon API, you see that there's this field called next. And this has a URL on it. If we click this URL, we now have the first one named Spearow. If I hit the back arrow, the first one's named Bulbasaur. If I click this next, this is the next set of 20 Pokemon. Something interesting about this URL, if you look at this URL, is pokeapi.co/api/v2/Pokemon is the exact same URL as we're on right now. But there's a difference because there's a question mark at the end. The question mark designates the beginning of what are called query parameters. This is a way for you to send information in a URL to the API if the API designates that there's query parameters. And so you'd have to know. So the people who created this pokeapi.co had a desire to be able to allow the user to set two values. You see the first one's called offset. You see the equal sign means this offset is being given the value of 20, and the ampersand separates them. So this is showing there's two query parameters, offset and limit. And limit is also being given a value of 20. So what this is saying is that offset means what's the number of Pokemon in the greater list that you're starting with, and limit is how many Pokemon you're showing. So if you wanted to click this, you could actually change these manually, and we could say a limit of 100. If I do that and I refresh it, now if I minimize results, it has 100 items in it. Whereas if I go back to what I had before, 20, when I minimize this result, it had 20 items in it. So we want to start using this next URL. There's also a previous URL that lets you go back to it. We're not going to implement this right now. I'll let you figure out a way to implement the previous URL, but we're going to start implementing the next URL on every time you press the on press button. So in order to do this, we have to start with taking this variable outside of the on press function, what they call outside of the context of this starting function. And the reason for that is that every time on press is called, this variable is being initialized to this value. So if we try to reset this variable, like what we're going to want to do, so that when we call it, we're calling the new variable, then it's going to get overridden by this because every time you call this button, this is getting reinitialized. In other words, the value is being set to URL again here. So what we're going to do is we're going to just Command X to cut this, and we're going to paste it above this. And now this has become a global variable. So because it's a global variable, global variables can cause a lot of problems, especially when we decide that we're going to make this be a const, which means you cannot change the value of it once after this line. So if I try to do URL, my gosh, if I can spell, equals hi, this will not work. It is actually going to throw an exception. In fact, if we do this and I try to run the page, it might show it right at the beginning. Okay, cancel. We'll just go back to it. All right, so if I hit refresh, and now if I inspect, we have an exception, assignment to constant variable. Well, The const means this is a constant variable. So what's a constant variable? It says at JavaScript JS 2:5. This is the JavaScript JS is the name of our file, javascript.js. 2 is the number of the line, and 5 is how many characters in, which the last number I never really pay attention to. Knowing the line is enough for me in all cases. But if we delete this, then then that'll be, then that error will go away. If I hit save, and then we refresh the page, now we're happy. The error is gone because you can't reassign a const. That's what let is for. So let allows you to reassign this value. So now if I do URL equals hi, and then I do a console log on URL, and we'll say, quote, URL is, and then end quote, and then comma, because you can pass both a string and a parameter into a console log if you separate it by commas. You could also do concatenation like this, but I prefer commas because it's just simpler. So if I do that now, and we go back to here, and we refresh this, and we hit click me, you see I didn't actually hit the click me, because if I just refresh the page, that code executes. And you say URL is hi. So now when we've set this with a let, we can reassign it. So we're going to delete that, and we want to reassign it inside of here, because this is where the new URL is. So if we say URL equals, we want to assign it the value of next from here. So in this object, the data object, remember this represents the object that we named data. When it comes in, we have the results value field in there, and then we have the next value. So if you look at this count, I think that's the total number of Pokemon. That's interesting. But it's 1,300 Pokemon. It's a lot of Pokemon to click through. But right now we're going to say data dot, can you guess what it's going to be? Data.next. Data.next. So we're reassigning the variable to data.next. And now if we console log, actually, console.log, and I'm going to say URL is now URL. So before we reassign it, it should be the exact same as this URL. After we reassign it, when we hit unpress again, you'll see it's a different URL. So let's go ahead and save that. Let's go back to here, hit refresh, and now we hit click me, and you can see in here somewhere is the log's not showing up. Oh, it's because somehow I got an asterisk there. That's weird. All right, don't know how that happened. All right, so let's try it again. So hit refresh, click me. Okay, it's the very top. You see URL is now, well, that's the original URL. So that's the first one. That's the same as this value right here. But let's click it again now, because what happened is that we console logged it before we changed it to data.next. So now we click it again. And there we go. We've got the new set of Pokemon starting with Spearow, and you see this URL is now, it's saying it's the same, which is interesting. Is that because, oh, there it is. It's down here. That's still the first one. The logs don't go away. So the URL is now, if I refresh the pages, the logs don't go away, but if you don't refresh the pages, the logs do not go away. So now it's offset 20 and limit 20. So now this is actually the same as the next URL. And if you click it again, it takes a little bit longer because it's loading all the pictures of every single one of these, and pictures take a little bit of time. It's also making a lot of network calls. It's not just making one, it's now making 1 plus 20. So it's making 21 network calls. Actually, it's making more than that. It's making 41 network calls, because after it gets the network calls to get the images, it's then in each image tag calling the URL that has the image. So that is how you, we can get rid of this. That is how you make it go to the next URL every time you click the button. So as always, it's good to commit -m added make clicking the button multiple times give next set of Pokemon. This is where the message can explain what you accomplished in this commit. And get push. Oops. Push. All right, well, thanks for watching, and good luck.